Hello, and thanks for joining me for another read through of my book Blind Spies. Today we're going to be reading chapter 2. This chapter is also told from David, our main character's perspective. It surely was a Sunday, a rainy, nasty, dismal Sunday. David sat on his couch and watched through the window as sheets of rain fell over Miami-Dade County. The palm trees that surrounded his apartment building were swaying and buckling with the strong winds and looked like they may break from the force. Tropical storms could be wild. They didn't faze him much, though. He had probably seen 100 in his lifetime. He was blessed enough to have been raised in Miami, a place that most people could only call a temporary paradise. A lot of storms blew through, though. There was always a downside to any good thing. Wasabi jumped from the coffee table to the couch and curled up in the crook of David's legs. He could feel him shaking, probably cold. No fur could make for a chilly cat. He grabbed the soft green blanket that hung over the back of the couch and tucked it around Wasabi. The shaking soon subsided as he drifted off into a restful sleep, the green fibers covering him, rising and falling with each breath. Excuse me. There was a loud knock at the door. David jumped, waking the cat, who then jumped up and darted for the door, alarmed and meowing loudly, skinny tail stretched taut. Wasabi was just as good at keeping an eye out as any dog. He wasn't sure how much damage that he could do in a scuffle, but he did know that Wasabi was excellent at announcing arrivals. He looked at his watch as he meandered to the door. It was past 8. Nobody ever visited him past 8. Another loud knock came just as he was about to open the door. He already had his "what the fuck do you want" face ready when he turned the knob, but his attitude quickly shifted when he realized who his visitor was. Dad? His father never visited, but there he stood in the hallway before him past 8 o'clock, wearing a long yellow rain slicker and black galoshes, sopping wet with a trail of water behind him, leading all the way from the elevator to David's door. Jesus, Dad, what are you doing out in this storm? Come on in. He stepped inside, continuing to drip water. David helped him out of his coat and boots and took them down the hall to the laundry room. When he came back, his dad was sitting at the tiny kitchen table that David always drank his coffee at. There were 2 chairs, but the other one was mainly just for looks, since it was rarely occupied. His dad looked concerned, like there was something heavy weighing on his mind. It had been a long time since he had seen him look that way. There had to have been something going on, or he most certainly wouldn't have just dropped by out of the blue like this. David walked over quietly and took a seat across from his father. They both sat there for a good solid minute, no one saying a word. His dad just continued to stare at his folded hands on the table as David studied him. So, what's going on? He had to break the silence. It was deafening. It's been a long day. You've had lots of days like that, Dad. Are you ever going to retire? Probably not, to be honest, but this was a different kind of day. You don't happen to have any bourbon around, do you? David walked over to his little at-home bar setup that he had in the corner of his kitchen and slid the doors on the front open to reveal a plethora of liquor bottles in all different shapes, sizes, and colors. Just like at a public bar, the most expensive liquors were stored on the top shelf. I got some Widow Jane 10-year-old Blanton's and the coveted Old Forester 1920 Prohibition style. Then I have... Say no more. Roger put his hand up. Pour me up a slug of that Forester. Make it a triple. Damn, you ain't gonna be able to drive. I didn't drive. How'd you get here then? Took a cab. Why? Where's your car? It's in the shop. I walked into work this morning. My place isn't that far from the office, and the weather was nice. No biggie. Car was still held over at the shop when I left work, so I called Yellow Taxi. Okay, but what brought you all the way here to Wynwood? You've only been here like 4 times and only on special occasions. You never just come to visit. What's up? David sat the whiskey down in front of his father. Roger put the glass to his lips and downed the liquor in one swallow. He had always been able to put down liquor, just like water. It was nothing to him. He had a lot of coping to do, and liquor made things easier, at least for a little while. We need to talk about a new project that Francisco told me about. He looked pained. like a lost child who was being put to a test but was unsure of what to do. It's top secret, probably the biggest investigation that our firm has ever handled. I was the first to know. You know how loose he gets when he drinks. He spilled it over a few at the bar the other day. Francisco Perez was Roger's boss, but more than just a boss, he was his best friend. They started out at the firm as equals. They were colleagues at one time, making the same pay and sitting at the same rank, but Fran had scaled the corporate ladder a bit quicker than Roger even cared to. Now he called the shots. His best friend was usually the first to know all of his secrets, though, and in their business there were a lot of secrets. His father was a steel trap outside of his immediate family. If you were a Vito or a Perez, there was literally an oath of silence that had to be taken with any information that Roger or Francisco shared with their wives and children. You didn't hear a thing and you didn't see a thing. You kept your mouth shut. Oh Lord, do I need to pour myself a drink to get through this one? You might wanna. David put his hand to his forehead and headed back to the liquor cabinet, afraid to hear what his father was about to say. Roger had worked for the same firm for most of David's life. His son was 5 years old when he went to work there. He had heard plenty of doozies when it came to projects at his father's job. To the outside world, Roger Vito was just a plain old bioengineer in a tall building in the city. He was a very private person, a man of few words, but plenty of action. The few people who were close to him, though, knew the truth about David's father's career. He was not only a bioengineer, but more importantly, he was a bioengineer for the Central Intelligence Agency. David grabbed the old Forester back out of the cabinet, poured himself a double shot, and downed it. What did the fucker come up with this time? David Allen, he scolded, pointing a stiff finger at his son. Roger may have been 60 and his son 33, but he made no qualms of putting him in his place when he said the wrong thing. Francisco was basically a part of the family. David's sister Teresa even called him Uncle Fran. For some reason, though, the guy had always rubbed Dave the wrong way. He had always believed that Mr. Perez was an evil, sinister man, but nobody else seemed to see it. He was quite good at fooling people, but David could read people. He couldn't be so sure if it was nature or nurture that had made him that way. Some people called it a gift, or it could also have a lot to do with who raised him. Roger, holding the position that he held, was very good at reading people. That's why he couldn't understand how his father didn't see through him, too. Sorry, Dad, sorry, said David, leaning back into the hardwood of his chair and crossing his arms sternly. Well, what did he come up with this time? Okay, son, but you have to swear to God that you won't breathe a word to anyone about this. It could put me and my entire firm in danger. Come on, Dad, how long have I been keeping your secrets? Intrigued, David leaned into the center of the table, like there was someone nearby who could actually hear. Wasabi was curled up under the table, but he didn't tell secrets. He wants me to engineer a new device. They've already started drawing up blueprints. Okay, what kind of device? Spyware. Okay, that's no biggie. They already have flies that can fly around and spy on people. What else have they come up with? This is a different kind of project, though. This device does not fly around and monitor from the outside. This device works from the inside. He slid his glass across the table at his son. Pour me up another one, will ya? David was interested. He rushed over to the bar and brought back the whiskey, twisting the cap and tilting the bottle to fill his father's glass. Hold on, what do you mean? He asked, sitting back down, never breaking eye contact. We're engineering a gene that can be transplanted into the eye of a human fetus. When a child is born with this gene, they basically become undercover spies. So undercover that they themselves won't even know that they are watching people for us. David's mouth fell open. This was the biggest doozy that Perez had cooked up yet. Has this ever been done before? First experiment of its kind, to my knowledge. Sounds crazy, just like Francisco himself. Roger rolled his eyes. So, whose baby is getting chipped? It's not a chip, it's a gene. These children will actually be born spies. So who wants to be the first contestant on Baby Born Spy? Francisco is getting a bit old to be cranking more out. Couldn't be him, right? I wish you wouldn't make a joke out of this. This is a very serious project. It could be dangerous if not handled correctly. Why y'all doing it then? David asked smugly, leaning back in his chair, crossing his arms yet again. Because this could be a turning point for our agency. It's part of the job. Look at all the other crazy shit that I've done for this business. Haven't turned a project down in almost 30 years. Ain't starting now either. Stubborn as an old goat. And in this, Roger answered flatly, no. That's pretty up, don't you think? Their bodies are already donated to science. These children will be born for a specific purpose. It's all in the contract that their parents will sign. So are we talking test tube babies? Maybe in the future, but in the preliminary stages, we want a human host. Everything done the old-fashioned way. Man, woman, spy. David raised an eyebrow. Sounds pretty crazy. He had so many questions swirling around inside of his brain, too many to be asked all in one night. So crazy that it'll probably work. You always have believed in his crazy schemes. Because the proof is in the pudding. Francisco has come up with some crazy shit over the years, but look at his track record. His ideas have helped to bust thousands of most wanted criminals. There was no denying that. As big of a creep as the man was, he knew his shit and he took care of business. He was very good at what he did. Although they were the same age, Roger looked up to Francisco. David shook his head as he retrieved another bottle from the cabinet and poured himself another one. Does Mom know yet? Jesus criminy, no. You know how apt she is on human rights and such. She was part of the movement back in the 60s. She would never go for an idea like this. So you're going to go behind her back? That was kind of the plan. David was taken aback. His parents 5 years, and he had never known them to keep anything from one another, let alone an investig. You know she's going to flip her lid when she finds out, don't you? She's not going to. You sure about that, Dad? She knows you pretty well. When it comes down to a game of life or death, I don't think I'll have an issue with keeping my mouth shut and maintaining poker face. One gene into existence. If anyone catches word of this project, I could very well be the winner. So, how exactly does it work? What do you mean? That it can be passed on to further generations, right? There's a 50-50 shot if one parent carries the gene. David needed a deeper look. Genes were his specialty. He worked with traits and heredity on a daily basis, but nothing like this had ever been attempted. It was new, foreign, twisted, but interesting nonetheless. Let's think into the future, began David, swirling his bourbon. The ice cubes made a tinkling sound against the glass. If all goes as planned with this, what exactly would happen if both parents carry the gene and have a baby? Would the child be guaranteed to be born a spy as well? Where things could possibly get a bit hairy. If this gene is designed to meet a new human, it mutate. Now, whether this possible mutation creates a monster is completely there. It's best if we do what we can to keep the people with this gene from becoming romantically involved. But that can be possible when the people who carry this gene are unaware that they even hang about a whole generally have no idea who or what they are. I'm sure there are going to be times when interventions must be made, but I'm sure that Francisco has some sort of a plan up his sleeve. David shook his head yet again. Let's hope so, because he's playing with a lot of lives right now. Okay, and that finishes up chapter 2. Thank you for watching. Again, this book is on Kindle edition. And come back tomorrow and I will read chapter 3. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.